filth and squalor everywhere I look. How very Doma. What I wouldn't do for a drink.
Of all of Final Fantasy XIV's expansions so far, Stormblood is probably the weakest. However, it does something pretty unique that I don't see a whole lot of other works doing. Now, stories about rebellions fighting against evil empires is nothing new. However, Stormblood provides something of a unique perspective on this by showing exactly what it's like for the occupied nations. Throughout the story, we see nations that are under Garlean occupation, whose primary tormentors aren't necessarily their overlords, but rather their own countrymen who have turned against them. Enter Yotsuyu. Yotsuyu was a Doman child whose step-parents wanted absolutely nothing to do with her, instead focusing their attention on her brother, Asahi. Eventually, they got sick of her and decided to make a quick buck by selling her to a brothel, where she proceeded to get a front-row seat to the worst of humanity. This, in turn, developed a deep hatred in her for her fellow Domans. However, her position just so happened to make her valuable as an informant for the Garlean Empire during their invasion. When Doma was finally brought to heel, they rewarded her by making her regent of the area, and she relished the chance to making the Domans suffer in every way she could think of. Throughout the whole Doma story arc, she displays pointless, petty cruelty at every turn. Her introduction shows her forcing a helpless villager to shoot his own parents simply because they're too old to work. In a worse game, this could have resulted in her being completely one-dimensional and flat, but Yotsuyu goes so far over the edge in her sadism that it makes her insanely memorable. Every word she says is just dripping in spite, coupled with some really excellent voice work. Her design also reinforces her personality as someone who sees herself better than everyone around her, and she firmly believes that she deserves to be able to inflict all this pain and death on her former countrymen. And after we learn just where she came from, it's not exactly hard to see her point. Ultimately, her sadism winds up being not only her own, but her superior Zenith's downfall by getting the Warrior of Light involved. Later on, she's presumed dead in the destruction of Doma Castle, but then she turns up alive and well later on. And this is where she gets interesting. See, Yotsuyu was presumed dead along with another character, a heroic samurai named Gosetsu. The two of them show up alive and well later on, but it turns out Yotsuyu has amnesia. Her mind reverted to that of a child, both in the way she talks and the way she thinks. Now I know what you're thinking. Amnesia? Really? And yeah, that's honestly what I thought too at first, but the way it's written makes it absolutely heartbreaking. See, her relationship with Gosetsu continues to evolve over the course of the rest of the expansion, and she basically gets to have the childhood she never could have. However, it was not to be. Remember when I mentioned her brother Asahi? Yeah, he's an Imperial loyalist, and he shows up later on with the sole intent of bringing back her memories. He does this by dragging her adoptive parents back into the mix. It's really sad, actually. When she does get her memory back, she's absolutely horrified by what she did. But then her parents decide to be their old abusive selves again, and she remembers just why she had that hatred in the first place. And while it is a shame that she turned back to evil, her parents were openly talking about selling her back into sex slavery the first chance they got. So when she murders them, I'm honestly kind of on her side. She then goes along with Asahi's plan to torpedo the negotiations between Garlemald and Doma following the war. And we see here that no matter how much she regrets her former actions, she's more or less resigned to it by this point and doesn't see any way out. This is also the part of the game where she transforms into the primal Tsukiyomi, and in the ensuing fight, not only is the music absolutely beautiful and the fight really challenging, but it also provides a fascinating insight into her character. During the fight, she summons illusions of all the people who have wronged her over the years to fuel her own anger. But despite this, one of the illusions is of Gosetsu, who tries to appeal to her better nature and get her to turn back. But as far as she's concerned, it's too late for her. In the end, Yotsuyu is an incredibly well-written character, both as a villain and as a victim of abuse. She's one of the main reasons why I'm hesitant to write off Stormblood like so many others do, and she is easily one of my favorite characters in Final Fantasy XIV.